And we are live. Welcome, welcome, beautiful humans. I am your host, Miss Queen, and welcome to Erotic Lessons, where we discuss all things desirability, our desirability, and how we use decolonization as a care practice to unlearn the mess that capitalism and colonialism has taught us, and to embrace our authentic knowing, our ancestral knowing that we have always been enough. Heard. I am also the founder of Erospirituality Centre, a federally designated nonprofit continuing education system that offers both a survivor's track and a professional track for individuals who want to learn how to use erotic in their everyday life to help them create an intuitive relationship to their mind, body, spirit, and energy. Today is Shift Sundays, where I am going to really dive more into the hows of healing. Like, how do we not only unlearn what we have been taught about not being desirable, but really how do we reclaim our desirability using the erotic? It is also August, Black August, which is also Erotic Embodiment Month. And in my part is Embodied Liberation, mind, body, spirit, and energy, looking at emotional intelligence, somatic intelligence. Both are needed for each other, and how we use the erotic with erotic intelligence that is about the synergy of those things, rooted from our center, from your center, from what you want to create for yourself and your thoughts and your actions and your decision making and your relationships. And also coming from this very trauma informed space. Why? Because our relationship to power informs how we show up in reclaiming our relationship to our desirability. For myself, coming as a person who has moved through crisis surviving and thriving, recognize that healing isn't linear. And to that point, as a crisis therapist, what I recognized was we needed to do more than what I had been taught in school. And actually, what I've been taught out of school as a comedic yogi and breathwork practitioner and meditation person in my own personal healing. Like, I wasn't a teacher, but what I was learning as a survivor of domestic abuse, as a survivor of some childhood trauma, I took the tools that I was learning in my personal life and I brought them into my professional life, because what I recognized was there was a level of activation you can't talk people through. Talking is different than coaching. Coaching is when you're actually providing people with the skills that they can actually use themselves, whether you're in their presence or not. And so we are going to move into it. Let's move into it. All right. Do I have any somatic news that's actually going on? What's actually been coming up in along the words like social media and all that good stuff? I don't know. Last week I've actually been sick, and so I haven't been doing a lot of perusing. So if you follow me on Sister Sexologist on Instagram or my LinkedIn, you recognize I've been quieter this week, and that's because I've also been recovering from being sick. And so real-time stuff, I recognize that also too, social media as a spiritual technology can overwhelm us and take over, and we become very fixated on the outside, and it prevents us from being in tune to what's going on the inside. And so hopefully you're going to take this time in the next 22 minutes or so with me to kind of disrupt the monotony of what social media does. And this is really you taking time for yourself. So thank you for joining me. It would be no different than, honestly, what I would do for my clients. And so I'm going to start with a question. How are you taking care of yourself? Like, intentional care of yourself that is outside of your everyday, like, basic hygiene. I know a lot of times when I start with this question, a lot of clients are like, well, Queen, I ate breakfast or didn't eat breakfast, whether they're a morning person or not, or breakfast person or not. They do their personal hygiene. and then pretty much just go on automatic pilot. There wasn't any real intention behind how were they creating the life that they want for themselves. They're just pretty much responding. I pretty much used to just respond to how other people perceived me in their life instead of me perceiving the life that I wanted to create. And so this is about us reclaiming that perception about what is the life we want to create for ourselves. And that absolutely is in the care practices that you have. And so understanding that somatics is, we are decolonizing somatic. And so understanding somatic is the body and mind are together. The body doesn't exist without the mind. The mind doesn't exist without the body. We're not moving from this sense of understanding ourselves as far as not being whole. There's probably another way I can actually say that, but today I'll take it for what it is. You get what I mean, though. Yes, and let's talk about the difference between the mind and the brain. The brain is the organ, the computer of the central nervous system. The brain becomes the mind when our conscious awareness connects to our understanding of how we are functioning, or our understanding that we're functioning. It may not necessarily be at a medical understanding, but it's our aches and our pains, our anxiety, our guilt, our shame, and our joy, right? Our mind is about our awareness, our conscious awareness. Now, where a lot of people get tricked up is, I'm aware, queen, I'm aware. Absolutely, you positively are aware. So how do we move from awareness to mindfulness? And that is what shift allows us to do. So let me introduce you to the 4 practices of shifts that you can do either individually or you can do together. What I have found in my practice is that this was something that I did together, especially too as a survivor, moving from an abusive situation and even abusive childhood to how do I hear my own voice? And so when I realized I moved into this place as a therapist of teacher, like educator, I was like, how do I teach clients? And at this time it was adolescents. Like, how do I teach folks how to hear their own voice? One of the earlier tools that I was introduced to was a crisis modality for, or treatment. Yeah, healing treatment modality for individuals called DBT. And every time I DBT, I'm like, I always mess it up. But dialectible behavior therapy. And so again, my personal healing, I already knew like there were certain things that I found very tangible for me to do, which again, if I'm hearing somebody else's voice in my head and I'm trying to hear my own, and I just remember the first time I argued with that voice inside my head, and the affirmations I came up with, I put on a 3x5 index card and I kept with me for years. So when I defaulted to that self-doubt randomly at times, you go into your purse, I would always see that 3x5 index card. And that's really one of the earlier lessons I realized about the power of speech, even coming from a church background of AME. Like, I know the power of words and like the word, if you think about from a religious standpoint, but I really wasn't paying attention to like, what was I saying to myself? And so affirmations was the really first place I learned about paying attention to the words I said to myself. In DBT, I was introduced to like framework, but it is, to me at the time, it continues to be inaccessible. Like, there is still people, you have to have certain abilities to be able to access DBT, not only in practice, because I believe at that time it was 12 weeks, maybe like a 12-week training for clients, but also as a professional. it wasn't accessible for me to become certified. And so I created Shift as an accessible way for folks to be able to have a framework without necessarily the boundaries that capitalism places, like a training fee and things of that nature. And so so let's go into the 4 practices of Shift. All evidence-based practices that, again, you've probably seen in other works where it's IFS, internal family systems, or DBT. And I do know also too, folks, that not everybody that's moving into this phase that seeks my work is clinical. And so you don't have to be a therapist in order to receive this work. This is for you, whether you are a survivor or you're a type of healthcare professional who is also surviving, and you want to deepen your relationship to yourself and your relationship to what I call embodied safety and self-trust. Let me go into the 4 steps first. So, Shift. Shift is an embodiment practice. It is not an acronym. Shift is actually what happens when you move from wounded to empowered. When I move from that place of activation and, God damn it, and I move through that activation safely. And so first is ground. We've all seen ground before. If we're familiar with mindfulness practices, right? It is about the ability to be twofold, present in the moment and also not impulsive in the moment. And so to become grounded, it is not enough, right? Because again, a lot of people get stuck in that place of awareness. And so it is not about being aware that you're activated. That doesn't make you grounded. Grounded is how do you move through that activation and take care of yourself because you're not okay. Grounded does not mean that you're moving to become okay. It just means that you are in a place of taking care of yourself because you're not okay. And so with ground is a presence practice that includes awareness. I am activated. Once you're activated, like I said, you don't have to do anything. You're going to come inside. And the only thing you're going to do is do what I call now the sacred pause, which is an intentional breath practice that you probably see on this YouTube page. There's a 5-minute practice, but this is really a 30-second practice. And so it's a 30-second breathwork practice. 30-second breathwork practice that you are going to do. And so with ground, all you're going to do is breathe in your nose for 10 seconds, and then you're going to contract your belly. And then no hold, you breathe out through your nose for 10 seconds, and you're going to expand your belly. And then you're going to repeat that breath cycle 3 times. So let's do it together. Ready? So relax your shoulders, relax your jaw, breathe in your nose, and I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Breathe out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And my apologies, because I do realize that I said it was a 10-second breath in and breath out. It's actually a 5-second because it's 30 seconds altogether. So each breath is 10 seconds. So we're going to breathe in for 5 seconds, no hold. Breathe out for 5 seconds, no hold. Breathe in through your nose. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Breathe out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Breathe in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Breathe out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Third breath. Breathe in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Breathe out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Good. Let your arms go loose and limp. Wiggle your fingers and your toes. Relax your shoulders. If there's movement that your body's inviting, mine was moving my head from side to side. Do that. That's ground. Next is center. Center, because again, what we've done is just move with ground practice of taking care of ourselves at the place of activation. Center, especially for those of us, again, when we have survived trauma, our protective responses, our trauma responses become our protective responses. And so center is about creating a dialogue in yourself that disrupts the trauma response of centering someone else's needs over your own. And so for centering, you're just going to ask yourself 2 or 3 processing questions. You're not doing anything. You're going to continue with your sacred pause, continue with your breath, but you're going to resist the impulse to move, to act, to do something, to get rid of the discomfort. This is about being able to manage discomfort without the impulsiveness of removing it. And then you've made a decision from impulsivity that you don't like. That's not what you desire. And so centering questions. What is the purpose of this moment? People don't even know your internal processing. Capitalism wants us to rush through because it wants us to respond. I come from the professional background like customer service. And one thing we learn in customer service is like it always wants us to respond very fast. Your life is not about serving other people. This is not that. People skills, I get it, but you're in a state of activation. And so what you need is just to ground yourself. And so you ask yourself, what's the purpose of this moment? Because if no, it's not serving you, centering allows you to activate self-permission to say, also, what is in my best interest? It allows centering as a practice allows you to consider yourself. Even if you haven't been considered before or never in your life, this is a practice of you getting into the habit of considering yourself. What is the purpose of this moment? What is in my best interest, like right now in the present moment? Because it may not be to engage with whatever's actually going on, right? We don't have relationship skills. And so, or we haven't necessarily been taught them. And so we need to be taught those relationship skills. And so now it's here. We're going to go ahead and just chill out. Next question you could ask yourself is, what do I need to do to take care of myself in this moment? Because this is going to help you, again, activate self-permission. You are actually engaging in self-compassion. This is a practice, is a self-compassion. You go from ground. Now you've activated self-compassion, which is going to help you activate self-permission. And self-permission, one of the questions also is, what do I need to do to take care of myself in this moment? Being able to take care of yourself in this moment allows you to move to the next part of shift, which is nurture. And I particularly use the word nurture versus self-care because in 2008, 2010, I absolutely could have used self-care, but I didn't like how self-care was being used then, nor that I do use it now, because the way capitalism commodifies and dilutes the intentionality, the meaningfulness behind words, behind intentions is one of the reasons why I don't call this a self-care practice. I call this an embodiment practice. And so while the intention is for you to take care of yourself, I want to move away from the commodified understanding of what capitalism calls for us to do, which is just to consume. And self-care is not consumption. Self-care is about embodiment. It's the rejection of consumption. Again, not for people's consumption. In erotic lessons about desirability, you've been getting several through this. You are not for someone's consumption. So nurture. With nurture, what you're going to do is, this is like a mini class in shift. Nurture, what you're going to do is with each one of your senses. And actually, there's actually 22 or so senses, but I usually deal with 6: taste, touch, smell, feel, hearing, and intuition. And so, also called neuroception. So what you're going to do is you're going to create a list of 5 of your care practices that you like to do. When I started with this, one of my care practices was eating pineapples. Why? Because I loved my grandmother's pineapples on the ham that she would make. And so I just constantly remember 2 things, the cherry and the pineapples. I would go for the pineapples. And so pineapples became one of my foods. It still is actually one of my foods. This is also too, again, trauma informed. So I'm very mindful that these care practices are not care practices in which we do to disassociate, but practice a healthy practice of detachment, which is an intentional removal from space, but also recognizing there is also the intention to return. And so it's about practicing detachment. It's about practicing like allowing the intensity of your emotions, the activation, to move further from your embodiment so you can get some more calmness or take care of yourself because you're activated. And so 5. So now what you have to do is your homework is to come up with 2 to 3 for the initial 5 senses, 2 to 3 care practices that you like to do, because this is going to nurture you. The intention is to nurture, to take a care practice that is going to, when you feel nurture, what do you think of nurture? When I think of nurture, I think of this blanket, right? I think of something that is going to hold me, that is going to sensory feel comforting and safe. Nurturing is about safety. You're creating safety for yourself through these care practices. In Erospirituality Centre, I dive deep into somatic and aerosomatic practices about intention to take care of yourself. And actually, I have a 7-day erotic affirmation practice that's coming up for members and for non-members as part of the virtual experience partnership with Sex Down South and their Spiritual Awakening Conference. I'm actually hosting a 7-day Healing Your Erotic Energy practice. And so if you want to get more into like nurturing practices, I invite you to one of those 2 opportunities to work with me more deeply when it comes to how to nurture yourself. And so now that you have your list of nurturing, right, you're going to have, and at that point, you're going to have a menu of 10 or more care practices. Your intuition is going to be activated, in which you're going to say which care practice to use, because the one thing I will often come across is the resistance of, oh, Queen, that doesn't work for me. Meditation doesn't work. Oh, Queen, that doesn't work for me. Absolutely, it doesn't. And I'm not here to talk you into the things that don't work for you. I am here to show you how to learn what does, and to learn and to know and to learn what works for you. You're going to have to be able to engage in your intuition, your neuroception. This is your body's ability to be able to receive and perceive information subconsciously. And when it connects to your consciousness, it becomes your intuition. To learn more about intuition, I also invite you to Dr. Joe Dispenza's work and his book, Becoming, I believe, or Becoming Supernatural, because really that is about engaging in energy medicine in a way that it's very plain language. His work also gives ancestral understanding work of energy medicine, but we'll talk about that another time. All right, going back. So we've had nurture, ground, center, nurture. The next part of shift, the 4th practice of shift, is affirm. Affirm is just that. How do you use words of power to reinforce the self-permission that you engaged with compassionately? Affirm. How do you use words of power to engage, to reinforce, to support the self-permission that you engage with compassionately? See how it goes? Ground, center, nurture, affirm. And so Affirm now what with this being Black August, and we're going to go into erotic affirmations. I want you to think about what erotic affirmations can you actually use. And from my workbook, erotic affirmations. I want you, and if you also go on Instagram as well, Healing the Erotic Self, and you scroll down a bit, I believe 2 or 3 years ago, I actually did a 2 or 3, I want to say 3 years ago at this point, I did an erotic affirmation challenge in which I gave individuals erotic affirmations, journaling prompts, and a somatic activity to actually do, which actually what informed the erotic affirmation journal in my healing. And so I want you to go there, to engage in that, because that's a great way of engaging without any cost to you. You don't have to worry about emails and all that good stuff. But that's a really good way. And so what I want you to do now is think of the words of power that you can use to engage. For me, it was, I am worthy of respect. I desire a life I don't have to escape from. I am desirable. Also with affirmation work, affirmation work, and when we think about words and tonality and the energy behind our words, it has me moving more into energy medicine and energy work. And so one of the things I will teach, and I do teach my clients, and I'm teaching in Erospirituality Centre, is how do we use energy as medicine and understanding our emotion as energy. And so with your affirmation practice, and as a hypnotherapist, the one thing I also realized my instructor and God sister taught me is that a lot of times when we're doing affirmations, we're not doing it right. And so affirmations has to have two parts. It has to have intention, and it has to be present about the now. It is not about what you're going to become. It is about who are you now. And with the shift practice, it does return us to that big question of who are you? Who am I? And not who you are in relationship to others, but who you are in relationship to yourself. And so continue to join me on Shift Sundays as we move through our shift practice, as we move through understanding who we are in relationship to ourselves and how we show up in our relationship with others. So that way we can be our best lovers. So that way we can create embodied safety, self-trust through the intuitive relationship of our mind, body, spirit, and energy, from a place of centering our desirability that is outside of what we know capitalism and colonialism has taught us. Because we ain't going for that shit no more. Absolutely, positively not. So please let me know in the comments below how you felt about this mini session with Erotic Lessons Shift Sundays. If you want to know more about or dive deeper, again, you're invited to join me at Erospirituality Centre this month for Black August as we move through the challenges of erotic affirmation, the energy practice, the erotic intelligence class that's actually coming up this Friday that I'm hosting as an open house that is free. We'll dive more into erotic intelligence and the offerings that will be continued that launches honestly this fall. Most of these offerings are available for ASEC CE professional certification. And I also have developed a self-paced erotic wellness care plan so that way you can use at home. And so whether it's shift, for somatic healing, whether it is healing your erotic energy and energy minute practice, or whether you want to learn how to live erotically, erotic living. All three of those care plans are also available on erospirituality.com. Also, if you're not sure where to start, take the Erotic Confidence Self-Assessment Quiz. So that way you can find out which one is right for you. Make sure you hit me up on all the socials. Hit me up on Threads. Threads is like my conversations. It's like where I'm texting folks to be like, okay, what's actually going on? Because as much as I think about speaking to the nonsense that's actually going on in the world, I want us to focus on the world that we want to create. Because it is with that world that we want to create that we're going to sustain our railroads. It is with that world that we want to create that we're going to create and sustain the relationships that we actually want to be in. it is with this intention and concentrating on the world that we actually want to create, that we understand how to disrupt the world that other people are trying to create and not have us in it. We don't want to be in their world. So thank you very much for joining me. If you have insights, questions that you want me to answer on this podcast, I'll be back Wednesday for erotic lessons, where we're going to talk more about desirability lessons and how we can feel our sexiest and our, how we can feel confident in feeling sexy. So please continue to join me every Sunday and Wednesday at 12:30 right here, YouTube Live. Please subscribe and share. Part of the things that you can do without having to join the membership, without having, to be not at cost. I have accessible information. I have accessible things. And so to continue to support this work, a like, a share, a subscribe does wonders. Also, make sure you do follow me on social media, Threads, Instagram. Threads is probably where I'm the most active. Professional folks, you can find me on LinkedIn. And again, always in my practice at Erospirituality Centre. Until next time, thank you very much for being here. And I shall end. Peace and love.